get to that. I'm super excited. I would love to hear from some of you while we kind of just wait. Feel free to just unmute yourself. Feel free to talk about what you do in your practice, what you specialize in, why you might want to use blood chemistry. Feel free to even, give like one question that you might have that I can kind of make sure that I hit on as well. If anyone is brave enough to do so.
Hey, Michael.
Who's talking?
It's Lydia.
Oh, hey there.
Hey, I'm in Florida, so I'm mostly observing because I my hands are kind of tied down here. But it's good information. I need to know it.
Well, so that's not true, actually, because of what changed. They have been doing an amazing job at fighting what has been going on in Florida. So Florida is no longer a red state.
What?
Florida, as of, I believe it was July, that it passed in 2020. So they are like a yellow-green state. There's some asterisks, but more or less you're a green state. So you can practice without a license. You can give individualized advice in the state of Florida without a license. There are some stipulations. So one of those being really kind of the big one as far as I'm aware of, is that if, let's say, someone has type 2 diabetes, they went to a doctor and their doctor prescribed them to see a licensed dietitian. Because the prescription was to see a licensed dietitian, they cannot come to you. I don't know why this is. It seems it's great because it's still good overall, because it was basically our way of being able to get past and being able to practice while, the dietitian's board didn't feel attacked and threatened, right? So a lot of theirs comes from the referrals from doctors, and I think they wanted to not lose that and not see but otherwise you are fully able to practice as an NTP, including doing blood labs for anyone who's in Florida. So it's pretty awesome. Like I said, that was super recent. That just happened last summer, but that was definitely a huge win down there for sure. If you are not in Jonathan Posey's Facebook group, I don't remember the name of it. If someone can grab the name of that and put it in the chat, that would be awesome. But he's one of the groups. He's one of the organizations that help fight for our right to be able to practice, to make sure that we still can, and fighting in especially the red states to try and get people's ability to practice. So anyone who is in Florida, you can now, this is no longer a restriction for you.
Great. That's good news.
I probably shouldn't have put a waiting room on this. This is going to be crazy. So many people are popping in. Hopefully I can try and keep up with this. We'll see. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Hello, thanks for being here. I totally forgot. I printed out my notes and then I didn't go grab them because they're in the other room. So I have them right here. So if I look over here, that's why. So for those of you who aren't super familiar with who I am, my name is Michael Rutherford. I have been practicing in health and wellness for about 6 years now. I graduated from the Nutritional Therapy Association about 4 years. I was also an ancestral health coach prior to that, going through the Primal Health Coach Institute from Mark Sisson over at Primal Blueprint and Primal Kitchen. This is crazy. I'm super excited. This is like the best problem to have. People are just popping in left and right. And so from there, I actually, right out of the NTA, I actually had a job lined up in kind of the premier local functional medicine clinic in my area before I actually graduated. People often ask, like, how do you do it? I think I emailed about 25 to 30 different practitioners across 2 different counties, just everyone in my area, and was just like, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is what, kind of my skills. This is my background. This is what I've been doing. I'd love to just chat, have coffee, come in, whatever it may be, and just talk a bit more. I wasn't asking for a job, right? I wasn't going and say, hey, can you hire me? Do you have space? It was kind of like a reverse discovery call. And that I was still trying to sell myself to them, but I was approaching them. And so that was, I probably, out of the 25 plus practitioners that I reached out to, I probably heard back from 6 or 10 of them, and I met with about 4 or 5 of them, and I got 1 job offer, right? So it was a ton of no's, and it was a ton of just nothing, but I got a job out of it, and I couldn't have been happier. It didn't end up working out that long term. I was there for about 8 months. One, just because a better offer came along to work with my family, my father's company, so to work in the family business. But also, while I was there, I got to work with a ton of different problems, a ton of different cases, different clients. I was an employee of hers, so all of her patients worked with me. We worked in packages, and part of that package was visits with her and visits with me. So, I also get, often asked a lot of times, and this comes up in my business program, mentoring, how do you work that out? Is, there's no right way, there's no wrong way. It's definitely, a bio-individual thing as to how you might work with another practitioner. For us, it made sense for me to be an employee of hers. So I just got paid an hourly rate. It worked. It was great for me. I didn't have to worry about trying to fight for referrals, and we just built those packages. So I got to work with a ton of different things. We specialized in neurodegenerative issues and the Bredesen protocol, but she had been practicing family medicine for 10 years in the area prior to opening her own functional medicine practice. And so a lot of her patients had come over from that practice. So we were still doing a lot of different stuff. While I was there, I had an incredible mentor, certified nutritionist, Tom Maltier, who wrote the Elimination Diet book. He wrote a few other books. He used to be an advisor for Thorne Research, the supplement company. He was previously on the board for the Autism Research Institute. He was a board member there. He often lectures for Institute of Functional Medicine. The man is like a functional lab savant. It was amazing to watch him look at labs. He would open up like an organic acids test and be able to tell you what was on the coming pages because of the patterns he was seeing. I'm like, there's no way. We'd flip, and there it is. It'd be exactly what he said. It was absolutely amazing to be able to learn from him. He's super smart. I've had, the opportunity to kind of be mentored and build relationships with a lot of other functional medicine doctors through different means. So I've been very fortunate in that, of just making some pretty awesome connections and people that I can just reach out to and kind of, bounce questions and concerns and different ideas off of. I've gone through multiple programs for functional testing. I've gone through 2 or 3 in blood chemistry. I've gone through organic acids test, Dutch testing, and GI map testing, education. I've done, I never want to even imagine counting up the hours of my own research that I've done and just digging through. I spent 2 hours just the other day just reading just on B6 testing, different testing markers, different forms of testing. That was it was just 2 hours on B6, just on the testing of it, not even trying to manipulate it, just different ways to evaluate that. So I've gone on and on. It's just something that I absolutely love. I just am enamored by research. I think it's super intriguing. And so I've been able to incorporate in 6 years a lot of experience and education, probably more than most people have, because I got to work in that functional medicine clinic where we were seeing 5 to 10 patients a day consecutively. I worked at my father's company where, we were working with truck drivers who have all sorts of issues, everything under the sun, for every autoimmune disease you could think of: diabetes, heart disease, cholesterol issues, high blood pressure, thyroid issues, low testosterone, PCOS. The list goes on and on. We saw it there because we weren't niching in a specific problem. We were niching in a person. If you niche in a person, you could see a myriad of different health conditions. And that's what we got to do. So it was really fun because I got to experience all of these different conditions, which forced me to do a lot of different research. I would get questions of diseases that I'd never even heard of. And I had to sit, I would sit there for hours and hours and days sometimes just in research, digging through, trying to figure out what's going on and how, what natural means have been studied in that. So I was there for about 2.5 years before I decided that I just wanted to come back and practice on my own, and kind of have my control. There was projects like this that I wanted to work on that didn't necessarily fit into their business model. And so I decided I needed the time to be able to do that. And so ever since I've been back on my own, I've been building programs, including this one, to help educate other practitioners. I have a program on kind of building the foundations and the tool sets and the skills that we learned as NTA graduates, how to really sharpen those. I feel like the NTA gave us an amazing toolbox without a lot of knowledge as to how to actually apply and use them. They were kind of just like, here's your hammer and nails, figure it out. And so I have a program that really works through, understanding how to use those tools and getting that under control. So that's something I do a lot of mentoring and consulting with other practitioners. So that means, a lot of that looks like practitioners who have clients that got lab work done, right? But they don't really know how to interpret it. And they're like, I don't really know what this means. And so I help them. We walk through it. I don't just have them send the paperwork to me and say, okay, cool. This is the protocol that you're going to do for them. I'll get on the phone with you. We'll spend, 30 to 60, I label it as a 30-minute meeting. And it's honestly, most of them go 45 to 60 minutes. As long as it's within my schedule, I don't mind going up to an hour. But I'll walk you through and explain not just, okay, here's the protocol, but why that is. What did I see in these markers? What do these markers mean? And then why that all pieces together. I'm going to try and mute some people. I don't know if I can go through and mute everyone without doing this manual, like one by one. If you guys are unmuted, just okay, I think we got them mostly.
I'm sorry, Michael, that was me.
No, you're good. You're good. Ash, I know I can, but it's on my phone, and so it's so weird to get through. I need to, sometimes I log myself in on the computer and I forgot to, because that makes it easy. But yeah, so, I've gotten a lot of experience in not only seeing my own clients, but then helping other practitioners. Then I have even, a larger influx of being able to look at these labs, piece it together. One of the things I love being able to do, and something that I noticed, is using the graphs and the charts that come from the NutriQ software, getting those that look at, hey, there might be an issue with this deficiency or this nutrient, a need for this nutrient. And I go into the labs and I'd be like, wow, you're right. It's right. Like, this person is having issues with this nutrient. We can see that here, or this system. And it was supported by both. And being able to bring that together, it was actually what really strengthened my belief in the extra reports that come out from the NutriQ, the things that talk about the system imbalances, as well as the potential nutrient deficiencies and things like that. Really I am quite impressed by that just on symptoms. But it helps to have that backed by objective data, right? The NutriQ can be somewhat subjective. It's kind of based off of what a person remembers feeling and how often they feel it. When we look at blood work, it's objective data. Like, it is what it is. It's the science. It's something that was measured. Now, could it be wrong? Yes, there are, false tests happen. It's not super common. It's not the norm by any means, but it can happen. But it's not normal. And there are definitely some things, things like thyroid markers. If someone is getting thyroid hormones tested, you need to stop biotin supplementation for about 3 days prior, because it can do all sorts of wacky things to the thyroid markers. So, in biotin can be in a ton of different supplements. It's in a ton of multivitamins and B complexes and different things for hormonal support. Any of the hair, skin, and nail supplements usually have biotin. So always recommending that I usually recommend clients stop just about most supplements, as long as they're not like dire for their day-to-day life, for 48 to 72 hours prior, just so that we're getting a more baseline level of those. And again, that's a ton of stuff that we go through. But yeah, so that's kind of my background and where I'm coming from in my ability to bring this kind of education to you guys and to hopefully a ton of other people as we move forward in the future. Why use functional blood chemistry? One, it is the most customizable testing you can do. You don't get to go to who's it, Genova, that does the GI map. You don't get to go to them and be like, hey, I only want these markers, right? Can I just pay $200 and just get these markers? You don't get that choice. You pay $350, $400, kind of depending on the pricing that you get, for upwards of $500, $600, depending on where you're ordering it. And you get what you get. There's no, you don't get to like not have those things and have these things or only test this. You got to get the whole thing. Dutch, they've got a couple different options, right? But you can't just test, the testosterone for whatever reason, or just testosterone and estrogen for a man. And they've created some different panels, so you have some options, but it's not customizable. You don't get to pick and choose. Organic acids, you can't just test nutrient markers. I could go on and on with all the different examples. People have asked, what's the cost for blood chemistry? Well, it goes from about $20 to, I don't know, probably $900, probably more. I mean, you could probably thousands of dollars, really, because it's a range, because you could get just a vitamin D, just a CBC, just a metabolic panel, or you could have a myriad of those different things. The other thing that's nice is, one of the things I talk about is that I have custom panels that I have worked with this company in order to create custom panels with LabCorp to get even better pricing. One of the issues, if you go to somewhere like Direct Labs, or I used to use Life Extension to order a lot of labs prior, because the problem is if you get everything is a la carte and they don't give you any discount for grouping a bunch of things together. So if you were to take one of my panels that cost, I don't know, probably around $160 and go to Life Extension and try and order it, it's going to cost you about $400. That's a huge difference. And that's because they don't know how you're going to order. So they have to charge the full fee for a solo vitamin D test, right? So they have to charge for pulling the draw and everything else. Private MD labs are probably going to be about, I don't know. I haven't looked at everyone. As far as I've seen, I haven't seen anyone who really like customizes and has an add-on fee versus single fee. If they do, that would be awesome. That's probably going to be better than other places. For example, I have my thyroid panel and that's extended. Instead of 7 markers, it's 40 plus markers. And yet Life Extension charges you $199. I get mine for $150. I get 40 markers versus 7 for $50 cheaper. Does someone have a question? No, we're good. Okay. So all those panels you'll have access through. We're going to walk through why I have them, who I use them for. I'll walk through how to create your own. But that has made a huge difference. I'm able to get much more affordable testing. And that comes even more so with retesting, right? So retesting a GI map because 2 markers were bad before, and now you want to you did a protocol and you want to retest. You're going to be hard pressed to convince me to spend $350 to $400 to retest for 2 markers. That is tough. And I feel bad as a practitioner trying to convince a client to do that, right? Like that is difficult. Now, if I do, for example, I just ordered $220 worth of lab work. I got my most extensive panel that I have. It includes, things like the NMR versus the standard lipid panel. I also added on an ANA with reflex, which looks at a lot of, it looks at nuclear antibodies for a myriad of different autoimmune conditions. I added my free and total testosterone because I haven't checked it in a while. I'm kind of curious. And so I added on a couple different things. And it's going to cost about $220. Now, if I want to follow up, let's say there's some things that aren't so great on there that I want to address. I might spend $50 to $125 to follow up on the markers I need to. So I don't have to spend the $220 again, because I really hope not that all of those different tests are going to be bad and out of range, and I need to work on all of them to do. I've got a whole other problem. The chances are, even with someone who has type 2 diabetes, I don't need to run my entire panel for that person again. One, because I work in things in steps, right? I'm not trying to fix every problem all at once in the first 4 weeks. So first thing I'm going to do is work on just getting their glucose under control. I know they're going to have inflammation issues. I know they're going to probably have homocysteine issues. I know we're going to have some other problems in their lipids. I just want to get that glucose under control first, right? I want to start bringing that down. So I'm going to run in 4 weeks, I'm not going to run their A1C again. That's barely going to move in 4 weeks. It's a roughly 90-day average. In 30 days, it's going to change, but not that much. So I'm not going to bother with that. I'm going to run an A1C, or I'm going to run the fasting glucose. I might look at the insulin and the C-peptide again to see those. Definitely going to look at the triglycerides, because that moves in like 3 to 4 days. You can move the triglycerides a massive amount. Those are going to be like the primary things. I may run nothing else in 4 weeks. I may just run those, just so we can see where that's going. That's going to cost them $40, $45 versus the first panel, which probably cost them $180. So it's a huge difference, right? Now, and that makes it really easy to do constant testing. You can retest it. If you see someone who shows a viral or bacterial or even parasite markers, we see some patterns for that. Shoot, I might test again in 3 or 4 weeks, and all I'm going to do is run that CBC with differential. I don't care about anything else. It's like a $20 test, right? Versus, hey, let's order a $400 GI map. Oh, cool. We see this. We do the protocol, and now I need to retest you again for another $400 to make sure it worked. Now, does that mean that the CBC is just as good as a GI map? No, I am not saying that. But I've seen things miss on a GI map. I've run a GI map and I've run a CBC with differential. We saw a parasite pattern within the CBC, $20 test. Didn't see anything show up on the GI map. Did the protocol because the pattern was there. Retested in 6 weeks with the CBC. Didn't bother with the GI map. Didn't show there in the first place. And now everything was normal. That pattern was no longer there. I felt really bad because, thankfully there were some other things that we pulled off. There was some inflammation going on, and there were some other high markers that, we could address with the GI map, but we didn't bother running again quite then. I think we ran one probably about 6 months later. I don't like to do those big expensive tests more than like every 4 to 6 months, because that's a huge investment. That's where things like the blood chemistry can come in handy. We can see gut inflammation on a CBC. There's so much we can see on a CBC and the metabolic. So the two major panels that most people talk about are the comprehensive metabolic panel, often labeled as the CMP. That's things like electrolytes, your kidney markers, your liver markers, and then your CBC with differential. That is looking at your anemia and iron status markers, as well as your white blood cells and the breakdown of those. That's why the differential is super important. Those are two labs that in total, they cost about $35 out of pocket, that a lot of doctors will run. If you go in for an annual physical and they do lab work, that's what they're checking. If you go into the hospital, if you go into the ER, they almost always run those two panels, because there's a lot of super important things that they need to be checking for on there. It's huge for a lot of different diagnostics, and that's all doctors are trained on, is how to use it for diagnostics. They are not taught how to use that as nutritional status. In fact, you'd be amazed how many doctors think that sodium, potassium, chloride, calcium a little bit more, but sodium, especially the sodium and potassium, are actual nutritional status markers. They are not. An elevation of sodium on a metabolic panel is hardly ever linked to increase sodium in your diet. There's very little effect. Potassium, it's a serum potassium level. You know how much potassium is in the serum? 2% of your body's potassium is in the serum. Almost 98% of the potassium in the body is intracellular. It is not showing on a serum level. You would need to get a whole blood potassium or a serum potassium plus red blood cell potassium in order to assess your potassium status. You could also do an HTMA and look at it, because it's a tissue thing. But the RBC, that's where most of the potassium is. If both of those were low, then we have a deficiency of potassium. But a low potassium on a CMP does not indicate by itself that it's a deficiency. Now, does that mean that it's not? No, of course, you could run the red blood cell or a whole blood potassium and see that there is a deficiency, but just because that serum level is low on there doesn't mean it is. But a ton of doctors are like, oh, yep, you need more potassium just based off of that, or vice versa with sodium. They're like, oh, your sodium's high. You need to back off on your sodium. In fact, some people could actually need more sodium because the sodium potassium is largely affected by your adrenals and kidneys, which is week 1, because of the hormones that it secretes for mineral and water retention greatly affect those more than anything else. So that's primarily what we're looking at those for. Okay. So it's easy, it's affordable, right? Comparatively, affordable is relative, right? To some people, $150 on a test is going to be extremely expensive. I get that. When comparing it to things like the Dutch, which is a $330 test, to organic acids, which is going to cost about $300, to the Dutch test, or the GI map, which is anywhere from $330, $350 upwards of $400 and even $500. Most of my clients are spending between $150 and $200 for their initial testing. Their follow-up is average $100 to $150 for the first follow-up. Their second follow-up maybe even less, right? So the longer we go, the less we may need to get. And then I might, maybe 6 months to a year down the road, I might do a full panel, just like, hey, let's check in and see what's going on overall, just to make sure. But a lot of times I'm kind of spot checking as we go along. That could be kind of akin to, you don't have to do if you're an FNTP, or the original NTP, and you've learned the FE or the SCH. I don't know why we keep changing all these freaking abbreviations. If you have learned the hands-on evaluation of putting your hands on the body on different points and seeing how they respond, this is akin. You don't have to do you don't have to do the full thing every time, right? You don't have to do the full assessment every single time. There have been many name changes. You don't have to do the full assessment every time. You can just come back and check 3 or 4 points if you want on digestion, right? You're doing a digestive protocol. You don't need to go check their blood sugar and their hormones and everything else right now. You can just check their digestive points, because that's what you were working on. That's the beauty of blood chemistry, is it's so incredibly bio-individual and customizable for what you need and what that client needs. You can change it for every single client, for every single need. It's literally why I love it. Now, it can also point you to, hey, maybe we do need to do a GI map. Maybe we do need to do a Dutch test, but we can start here and maybe not need those things, right? So we can start, it's far more foundational. It's far more whole body, right? Like, we need to be careful. I almost see functional medicine becoming this like specialty field again. And we need to be careful of that. That's what I'm a big fan of, niching in a person instead of niching in a specific problem. And I know that's a little bit hypocritical of me, because my handle on Instagram and over in Clubhouse is literally the thyroid coach, and I specialize in hypothyroidism. But I'm a big fan of niching in a person, and I still see a lot of different other problems. And really, I get on calls, and some of my marketing is less about thyroid and more about the symptoms that are associated with it and people that are feeling that. Because a lot of people have thyroid problems and don't even know what the freaking thyroid gland is. I don't think I had ever actually heard of a thyroid gland, honestly, until I started learning about ancestral health and all these things. And probably when I came across L. Russ's book, who was done under Primal Publishing. I don't even know if I'd heard of a thyroid gland until then. I was in my mid-20s, late 20s, before I even heard of it. A lot of people have no idea, right? I don't ever remember learning about that in any of my health classes. So it's, it can be a problem trying to get super specific about that. But we've got a GI map, and all that does is tell us about, what's that book on thyroid health? That's a good question. Let me see. I can tell you in a second. I forget the name of the Paleo Thyroid Solution. the paleothyroid solution. That's what it's called. Oh, hey, Bess. Yeah, Bess should know. She works over at Parental Health Coach. Or do you? Do you still? I think you do. I don't know. I get confused with everyone over there. Yes. Okay. I thought I had that right. So yeah, Ross is awesome. She is hilarious. She also has her newest book is Confident as Fuck, another great book. She runs the podcast over at Primal Blueprint as well. She does a ton of stuff over there. She's awesome. Yeah, so the GI map, it's all you're getting is gut stuff. Now, does the gut and digestive system help a ton of the body? Yes, but it's even more so. It's mostly specific to the colon. Organic acids, those digestive markers are more specific to the small intestine. It's why many practitioners will run both, because they're looking at different parts of the digestive system and different functions. You also get a lot of other stuff from the organic acids as well. Dutch is just looking at hormones, right? We don't get the other things. We have to be careful of that, because hormones are consequences, right? They are not foundational. Now, we can infer some things as to what might be causing that because of how the Dutch is done, and it's looking at a lot of metabolites. But we need to be careful of like getting super specific and only run like, oh, well, I specialize in hormones, so I'm just going to do hormone testing. Well, cool. What caused those hormonal issues, right? What I can tell you causative factors from blood chemistry with digestive issues. Right? I can look at patterns and see low stomach acid based off of a $20 test. I can look at possible causes. I can look at, we can infer a lot of different nutritional issues, and we can look at biliary stasis and issues of the gallbladder and liver and bile production and flow off of blood chemistry. We can look at so many of these different things. As NTPs, can we open with, is that who opens Dutch? So not as if you haven't done anything else, pretty much none of the big third-party tests like organic acids or Dutch or GI map, none of those tests are going to be available to you just because you're an NTA graduate. They do Dutch, yes. I would be super surprised if they let you in. Usually you have to, in order to open an account directly with them, I think you have to be licensed. They maybe take one-on-one. That was my experience previously. I wasn't able to get accounts to order labs until I had additional testing with them, but that would be awesome. Well, yeah, I mean, you can now technically you can find these tests anywhere. So you can go to like direct labs and get a lot of these third-party tests. You're going to pay a lot more, and these are not straightforward tests. Like, especially organic acids is a ton of how things relate to each other, different ratios. That's how, as I was saying before, Tom Altier is able to look at like the first 2 pages of an organic acids report and start telling you what's on the following pages, because it's how these different markers interact with each other. He wasn't like seeing through the paper. He just understands when this is high, when these things are high, we start seeing this pattern that's going to drive these things low or these things high. So you have to be able to understand those to fully interpret. HTMA is another great example. Hair tissue mineral analysis is not straightforward. It's not like, oh, that nutrient is low and so you need it, right? Or that nutrient is high and so you need less of it. It's all, the ratios is actually the most important thing on HTMA, not the individual status of themselves. So there is nuanced interpretation to a lot of those tests. And that goes for blood chemistry as well. It's not just like, oh, this marker is high, and so that's all we look at. We might see that, hey, sodium is high. It's on the high end, it may be within optimal, but it's on the very high end, right? And potassium is on the very low end. That inversion, that opposite of each other, the negative reaction, how they go apart, is letting you know what the body is doing. It's wasting one and holding another. Even though they're within optimal, they still may be an issue. Estrogen dominance is a fantastic example of this. You can be high end of normal estrogen, low end of normal progesterone, and you have estrogen dominance, even though both are within normal, because they're opposite each other. They should be more balanced. We have to learn to look at these things. This is why we can't just give a cheat sheet for blood chemistry and be like, all right, here you go, and think that it's going to work. Like, it takes learning these markers and understanding what markers are related to each other, how they interplay. It's so much of what we spend time on. So what does that curriculum actually look like? So the course will open. I can't believe I'm doing this. This is going to be a stressful month for me. We're 1 month away from opening, literally. The material will open, first week material will open on April 5th. That's a Monday. Within give or take around then, one of the problems with course platforms, course building platforms, is they all work on UTC time. I don't know why. They don't allow you to customize and be like, cool, I want everything scheduled in Pacific time or Eastern time. They all go off of UTC, which is something like, I think it's like 7 or 8 hours ahead of Pacific time. So it gets really weird. So it should open up on Monday the 5th. Our first call will be on Thursday, April 8th. So that's about a month from today. And then you'll get new content, hopefully that night or by Friday morning, you'll have the following week's content. And we'll have classes every week. There are 10 classes in total. Week 1 is a lot of just introduction, talking about scope of practice, talking about language, how to go through that properly, really digging in again, kind of going back over why we use functional blood chemistry. We look at lab ranges versus optimal ranges. Why, right? And we'll go over all the different, we'll have a full list of all the different markers. I'm super excited. One of the things that I love that I'm going to be doing with this program is supporting others within our community. For those, some of you may be familiar with Ellen, she lives in a red state and she does digital design. And so she doesn't, because she's in a red state, she doesn't use her NTA education, but she loves doing digital design for practitioners. So by the way, if you need anything done, feel free to reach out to her. But I am having her do a lot of that kind of stuff. She's going to be making some ebooks, some PDF handouts, because I don't want to be, I have a short timeline that I need to get everything else still finished. There's still a ton that I need to finalize and put together, and I have a month to do it. But she's gonna be kind of helping with some of those products. So we'll have kind of a cheat sheet, a reference guide that you can use. Ideally, what it's going to have is it will have it'll have every lab marker. It'll have the optimal range, the lab range, and then 2 spaces to put your client's results. So it'll be the initial and then a follow-up. So you'll be able to compare right on there. It'll be a fillable PDF. Which is one of the many things. I'm going to kind of have a summary. What's the general timeline with new client? Let me see what that was. I missed that. I can't see the whole chat. Actually, I'm going to get to the questions at the end. I will come back. I will see them. And ideally, instead, if you guys have questions, if you can put it in the Q&A box instead of the chat, it'll super help me be able to go through those so I don't have to sift through the chat. If you can put it into the Q&A, that'll be super helpful. So we'll talk about lab range versus optimal range. We'll talk about scope of practice, why we're using all this, and kind of getting that piece together. In week 2, we then start jumping right into the labs. We'll start with the metabolic panel with the kidneys, adrenals, and hydration. So with each week, where is the Q&A box? Hopefully there is one. Oh, you know what? There may not be one. What? Oh, that's weird. All right, put it in the chat. Let's see if I can open one up while I'm in here. Apparently I need to go into my settings. Okay, well, that's good to know for the future. Go ahead and put it in the chat. That's okay. I'll also just open up so you guys can come on mic and ask questions too, in case we miss them. So with each one, we're gonna go through the different markers that we're looking at for that system. We will talk about, why that marker might be low, why it might be high, how we're looking for these patterns within. A singular marker may not mean much. If we start seeing a pattern, that's when we really know we might see a problem, right? So sometimes we can kind of have a single marker that can mean, with certain ones, they may have been dehydrated that day. It really wasn't a deeper issue, right? It wasn't an adrenal issue. They just needed more water, is all it is. So we can look at some of those things, and we'll walk through therapeutics with diet, supplementation, herbs, botanicals, sometimes some lifestyle stuff, depending on what it may be, and how we can modify and help support the body. And again, I am not a big fan of moving a marker for the sake of moving a marker. I kind of made a post, I think it was last week, asking, the group about red yeast rice. By the way, not a fan, because red yeast rice is who was it? I think it was Greg. He said it perfectly. It's just green allopathic medicine. It's really no different than a statin. Really, it does the exact same thing. It acts on the same genetic enzyme within the liver to inhibit the production of cholesterol and CoQ10. It doesn't solve a problem. It just lowers a marker. Lowering a marker for the sake of lowering a marker doesn't do anything, right? It's no different. We just used a supplement instead of a medication. Blood pressure medication, great example. Yes, I have no doubt that it's going to lower your blood pressure. That doesn't mean it fixed anything, right? Statins, no one's arguing that statins will lower total cholesterol or lower your LDL, but does that mean it fixed anything? No. So we have to be careful of moving markers for the sake of moving markers. So we'll talk through why that problem might be there. And Amy, that's because you have an awesome functional medicine doctor who happens to be one of those people that I reach out to as a mentor. And I was actually super bummed. I was this close to working on a huge clinical study for diabetes and insulin resistance. Dr. Robert Abbott. He is actually one of the doctors who works with the AIP women and Dr. Sarah Ballantyne to do those studies for the AIP, what is it, their 6-week program or whatever. He's one of the medical doctors that is working with them on those different studies. But yeah, he's phenomenal. If anyone was at the NTA conference in 2019, he was there. I don't remember. No, he was on the panel that talked. So he was there in 2019. Super awesome guy. I don't know how he did it. He went through med school. He's pretty young. He went through med school knowing he was going to do functional medicine. How he had the patience to sit through that, I have no idea. That takes a lot of patience to sit through that stuff. But yeah, so week 2, kidneys, adrenal hydration. Week 3, we go through the liver and gallbladder. This is a big one. As far as importance, it's not necessarily a huge section. There's only a handful of markers we're looking at, but super important. The liver plays into, it's probably one of our most important organs. It plays into every major system that we have. So we will often see issues here, often needs for support here. So we'll kind of give an overview of phase 1, 2, and 3 detox in the liver. We'll talk about those different markers. We'll talk about the different patterns. A lot of the markers in there in the liver are looking at the enzymes, which means that they're not always specific to the liver. They can mean other things. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about how to kind of know when it's probably a liver issue, when it may be something else, and when you might need to run the full panel to look at the different isoenzymes to establish where that enzyme is most active. So those are we'll talk about those different things and go through that. We'll go through blood sugar regulation in week 4. We'll talk about hyperglycemia and type 2 diabetes and insulin resistance. We'll also talk about patterns with hypoglycemia, things that we can do, markers that signify this. Super, super helpful. And again, walking through some different patterns we can see with that. That's probably going to be a long week. I have done so much. I don't know why I'm so fascinated with blood sugar regulation. I really am. It's funny because it's probably one of the most simple, hyperglycemia is one of the most simple things to address. Honestly, it's like, I'm glad when I get someone with type 2 diabetes and this is going to be a cakewalk. I can do this in my sleep. Part of that is just because I've worked with it so much. It's also because I think I've done 3 full courses specifically on blood sugar regulation and hyperglycemia. Like functional medicine type courses. So I say that, realizing that it's not simple for everyone. It's actually a pretty complex system. We've really kind of oversimplified it to just like, hey, don't eat so many carbs. It really is a lot more than that. I just had a fantastic call a couple of days ago for, I think it was like an hour long crash course through insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes. Obviously, it's a little bit more complex than just eat less carbs, right? That took me 2 seconds. And we spent 60 minutes talking about insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes. So there's a ton there. And again, we'll go into hyperglycemia and hypoglycemia and those different patterns. Week 5, we get into part of the CBC. We'll get into the immune system. So we'll start breaking that down. We'll talk about viral, bacterial, and parasitic patterns. And then of course, going through therapeutics for those, how to follow up with those, timelines on that. We'll also do some bonus stuff on the Epstein-Barr virus panel and the ANA with reflex, which again is used for discerning a lot of autoimmune issues, often show up on the ANA. With the Epstein-Barr, we'll break apart. I think there's like 4 different antibodies that show up. Almost everyone that gets tested is going to be positive for some of those because most people have been infected with the Epstein-Barr virus at some point in time. That doesn't mean it's a concern. It doesn't mean we need to do anything with it. Most people it's dormant in, but we can also look at some antibodies that are showing current activity and viral replication. Those are what we want to focus on. That's what we want to be concerned with. Super common in autoimmune diseases, especially Hashimoto's, has a lot of link with active Epstein-Barr virus. Week 6 was probably going to be the longest one. This is lipids and cardiovascular markers. So we'll go through the standard panel. We'll go through the NMR lipo profile, which if you're not familiar with that, that's the test that you're doing to establish the particle size, the small and dense versus the large and fluffy, looking at the LDLP, which is the most important marker on there. We'll break all of those down. We're also going to get into a ton of different markers. We'll get into some other cardiovascular markers like Lp(a), which if you ask an allopathic doctor is simply genetic. It is not. We can influence that a good chunk. There are studies looking at different therapeutics affecting that as much as lowering it by 30%. That's a huge difference. To lower a number by 30% is a big deal. So we'll talk about some of that. We'll talk about the importance of these markers, why we're looking at these, how they can point to other things. I have done several different courses. Like I've said, I've looked at, gone through different programs, including, lipids and cardiovascular. And I had to piece all of those different programs, kind of what I learned from each of those into one. So when I say that I have never seen a lipid and cardiovascular section as in-depth as this, I mean it. Now, again, I haven't gone through IFM. I would imagine hopefully that IFM covers all of these, that Chris Kresser might cover all of these in his full functional medicine program, but those are $10,000, $15,000 programs. So I would hope so. But if you go, I haven't taken FDN, but I've talked to people there and a lot of these different programs, they don't bring all of these in. So we're going to look at all of those. Week 7, we come back to the CBC. To finish that up, we'll look at the markers for anemia, the red blood cell markers. There's several different markers and indices in there, as well as, because we're now talking about iron and iron status, we will move into nutrient markers. So both direct markers as well as indirect markers. We have a lot of indirect markers for nutritional status, but then we'll also talk about direct nutrient testing in the blood and some of those. So that'll cover a bunch of minerals. We'll cover primarily B vitamins in there. We'll also look at dietary protein need and glutathione status in there. And again, we'll talk about more, why those issues may be coming. And it's not just, oh, we're deficient in this, so just take this supplement, right? Like, oh, you're deficient, you're iron anemic, so you just need more iron. Almost never do we supplement with iron directly. If you supplement for a true iron deficiency, I highly recommend using desiccated organ capsules and things like that. Spleen being number 1, kidney and liver being after that. But if you can get spleen, that's the absolute best. Is super, super high in iron. Combining it with liver is probably best though, because there's so many cofactors for iron metabolism that are better found in liver than it is in spleen. Then we go through, I know a lot of people are probably going to be upset that I put this so late in the game, but we're finally at the thyroid panel in week 8. So we're finally going to get into the function and physiology of the thyroid right? Top to bottom. We'll really break this down. It's probably going to be another long one. That's probably fitting for me to spend a lot of time on this one. So we'll go through that. We're going to talk about, what makes a complete thyroid panel, why I run much more than that, and I have an extended one. We'll talk about the physiology, really breaking that down. We'll get into autoimmune issues there, how that impacts, where that impacts. We'll talk about how to identify the different patterns, especially the major ones that you'll see the most. We'll talk about how much of these issues, a lot of thyroid issues aren't actually thyroid issues. It's becoming a huge kind of commonplace to just give supplemental T3 to thyroid patients because, in functional medicine, because, allopathic medicine doesn't do it. So it must be good. I almost feel like that's the logic. Like if it's not being done in allopathic medicine, it's because it's actually good. So we need to be doing it. Giving T3 to the vast majority of thyroid people will not fix their problem long-term. If they have a T3 issue, it's almost never just a lack of thyroid hormones because the body has a cell response to shutting that down. Why did the body slow it down? There is a reason. The thyroid hormone, especially T3, regulates cellular metabolism, tissue metabolism. It slows those processes down when it is under stress, when it is under duress. Why? Because creating things like energy and ATP create what? Oxidation, right? The more energy we create, the more oxidative stress we have. So we have to keep up with that. So if it is under duress, if it's stressed out, the last thing it wants is more oxidative stress to deal with. So it slows down the cellular metabolism. It's doing that for a reason. Do we really want to try and beat that and give more for the sake of manipulating a lab value? No. Bigger reason is that why it only, from a lot of people, either they have to keep increasing their T3 or it works for like a few weeks or a month and then stops working again, is because the same enzyme that takes, I'm getting into it, but I can't help it. The same enzyme that takes T4 and turns it into reverse T3 also takes T3 and deactivates it into T2. So we have issues here. This is actually something that I just recently learned really changed how I practice with my thyroid clients. I treat reverse T3 completely different now. It's really, really helpful. We're going to get into a ton of that. So I'm super excited about that. That was going to be fun. Then in week 9, we go into inflammation and deciphering vitamin D. And this will probably be another super interesting one for a lot of people. Vitamin D has been a huge topic over the last year. There's a lot of good and not so great, things being said about vitamin D and the supplementation. We're probably, again, oversimplifying things. So we're going to break that down. 99% of people are running one marker, which is the 25-OHD for vitamin D, which is not the active form. 25-OHD is the inactive form that needs to still go through the kidneys and turn into calcitriol in order to become active. And ideally, those should be a 1-to-1 ratio if they're close to. If they are not, and let's say their 25-OHD is 20, but their calcitriol is 45, they may not need more vitamin D. And giving them vitamin D may not necessarily increase their 25-OHD, and it may not be what they need. We have to figure out why that is. There are different processes. We can have high 25-OHD and low calcitriol, and we can also have high calcitriol and low 25-OHD, depending on the different issues. And so that is a huge piece of that. We have to understand what is going on with that. And again, that can be a picture, help us see the bigger picture when we look at both of those. We're going to talk about when it might be helpful to run both of those. And we'll go into a bunch of, again, direct and indirect inflammatory markers, and what those are looking at. And then finally, in week 10, we'll fully kind of bring all of this together. As we go through, we'll talk about, like in the thyroid, a lot of that is going to be talking about, make sure you go check, if you see this issue, if you see this pattern, make sure you go check these markers. Do you see issues there? How is that all connecting? I'm trying to help you see that bigger, always bringing back to the bigger picture and the whole person with each thing. But especially in week 10, that will be the focus, is to how we bring all of that to a whole. How do we look at this as a whole and not get zoned in on these individual markers? How to make sense of it all. We'll also go through, opening, making sure you have your own account open with labs. We'll talk about like custom panels and applying those and things like that. Okay. So that's the schedule. That's everything that's in there. And again, so that is going to start on April. Class opens April 5th. First workshop is April 8th. And the last one is on June, will open June 4th. And so I think it's like June 10th, I think is the last webinar. The last class will be on June 10th. So it'll be 10 weeks. We don't skip any, so you can just, I have it right here. It's June 10th. So yeah, it will be from April 8th to June 10th will be the 10 weeks. We'll go through all of that. Again, all of those will be recorded. They'll all be put into the class. So you have them there. You'll always have access to you have lifetime access to this program and material. You don't get shut out for like 2 years and then finally get to access it again. Who is we? Okay, I'll get to some of this. I promise I'm going to get to those questions. I'm not ignoring you guys. Now, what all are you really going to get out of this? So one, other than obviously all of the information, you're going to be more confident. One of the best things I've seen, and every person who's really ever gone through any testing program or course can tell you this, is probably one of the biggest things that they have done to increase their confidence, right? And I think a big part of that is you are getting objective data. I think some people really, now again, I'm a huge fan of the NAQ and the NutriQ. I think it's phenomenal, but I know that a lot of practitioners, especially with less experience, have concern from it. They don't feel as confident in that. I've been able to see it compared against labs, and I'm like, wow, it can be really sensitive, right? It could be like off the charts in the thyroid section, and they're like barely subclinical hypothyroid, right? And so it can be quite sensitive sometimes, and it's an amazing tool, but it's subjective. So it is subjective data, right? We have issues with over reporters, we have issues with under reporters. You don't get to do that on labs. Like, you can't cheat your labs. You can't be like, oh, I'm gonna, I don't really feel that bad, and so your thyroid markers look better. Like, it doesn't work that way, right? So it's objective data. It is what it is. And you build confidence in that. And you're going to learn to, again, I'm not just going to give you protocols and be like, here you go, this is what you do for this, because I can't possibly write protocols for every single scenario, first of all. Like, this is not possible. Second of all, they don't work for, a good protocol will work 75, 80% of the time. I have an ebook protocol book that you'll get access to, and I'm going to be building it for this, but that I used in my first program with over 30 pages of protocols. They work 80% of the time. They're not perfect, but I also want you, that's only used as a baseline. You need to be able to learn, and that's what this program is going to teach you, on how to customize those. Those are a starting place. How do we move that for our client, right? Well, I've got a client with diabetes and digestive issues. Do I do 2 full protocols for both? Like, where do we start? What do we do? How do we approach this? So we're going to be working through that. By the way, if you have someone with type 2 diabetes and they have dysbiosis, you use berberine. That's what you do. So berberine works for both. This is fantastic. When in doubt, I kind of joke that when in doubt, you use berberine, because berberine just does a ridiculous amount of things. But no, seriously. So there's going to be over 30 lessons. There's not shy of content on here. There's over 30 lessons, hours and hours and hours of content. You're going to get PDFs. You're going to get handouts that you can print and use and keep and use in your practice. You're going to have ebooks that'll help work you through all of this, kind of like study guides, and just to be able to kind of just keep along. I love having my PDFs because I can keep them right on my phone. They're always accessible no matter where I am. It's super easy to find. You're going to grow as a referral-based practice. The number one way to get referrals is to get good, quick, solid results. When you get results for people, they want to tell other people, right? This is the number one way to get referrals, is to do an amazing job and blow people away. I'm also going to talk you through how to deliver labs, how to present that. Something that people, my clients and other practitioners absolutely love, was something I learned from the functional medicine clinic, is all of my clients who get lab work get a 15 to 20 minute recording. I pull their lab results up on my computer, I screen record, and I go through and explain their labs. This is separate from our call. I do this separate from our call. They get that recording that explains their labs, gives the recommendations and why and how it all ties into their symptoms and everything else. And they get that to keep, and it blows them away. I've had clients show it to their medical team, and the doctors are like, who is this doctor that's done this for you? And I'm like, it's me. I'm not licensed. But it is this amazing tool, because let's face it, there's a ton of it. This is why so many of you have asked, like, is this going to be recorded? It's a ton of information. I also talk fast. It's hard, especially, to a layperson. It all sounds like alien speak half the time. They're like, I have no idea what I just heard. And so it allows them to go back and re-listen to that over and over as much as they want and reference at any point in time. And it's super, super helpful for them. So I'll walk through that. You'll get access to ordering your own blood labs via LabCorp. So all the labs will go through LabCorp, and you'll technically have access to every single lab marker that they have. You will be able to order. You won't need most of them. We'll talk about the ones that are of the most importance that we'll use, that we'll go over, and things like that. We'll have 10 live classes, all recorded. They'll have Q&A time so we can discuss things, ask deeper questions. You'll get access to my custom panels. I'll kind of talk through how I came about that, why I did, why I made them the way they did. Also, one of the things that I am a firm believer in is you need to know how to practice. You should have some practice, right? So you will get included a $185 panel in the cost of this class. So every single person, not every single one of you, hopefully every single one of you, if all of you sign up, I'd be super happy. It'd be great. Every single person who signs up will get included in the cost my comprehensive wellness panel that looks at, sweet Jesus, I should have pulled it up, but I don't have it. It's a lot. I don't have it. It is the CBC, it's the CMP, it is vitamin, it is the 25-OHD. Just looking at that one again, you can add more. You're going to get included in the cost. We can customize the orders if you want to add more to it. We'll look at your thyroid markers minus the antibodies. Now, again, if you have Hashimoto's or you are concerned about Hashimoto's, let me know. We can always add that, of course. You will have the NMR lipo profile. That will be on there. We'll look at some extended liver markers, some nutrient status with magnesium and some other things as well. So again, that's going to be included, and you will get a 30-minute consult with me. So not only do you get the labs, you are going to get a consult where, again, I will walk you through what all of that means specific for you. This ties in to kind of your final. Each week, by the way, is going to have a little mini quiz. They're not super hard. They're not crazy. They're multiple choice. And so you'll have a mini quiz that you need to pass in order to open up the time. You get more than one chance, don't worry. But you'll need to pass that before getting access to the next week's material. The final week in week 10, because we're really just kind of mapping it all together, what I actually really want for you to fully get your certificate of completion is a case study of your own. Now, if you're not working with clients where you feel comfortable ordering blood work yet, that's totally fine. Run your own, right? Because it can be your follow-up, which is even better, which is really ideal. What I'd love everyone to do is to do your own blood work, because I'd love to see what you follow up with, what you decide to order, and why you pinpointed those labs from what you previously did, seeing what changed, right? And so, that will actually be your final, is your own case study. It can either be of yourself or a client. It doesn't have to be you. I think it would just be super cool to do your own. But again, like I said, you'll get that $185 panel included in the consult with me. You'll get I'll have a reference guide. So it's going to have every single marker that we talk about and that you learn about. It will be included in this PDF with the optimal range, the lab range, and then 2 spaces, one for your client's first test and then their follow-up. Obviously, if you can do more than that, of course, but you'll just have to grab a new sheet and do it again. But I want you to at least be able to have that follow-up there. There's some other ebooks. There's one with protocols. There's going to be one that will have kind of a more, it'll be like this. So for example, it's going to walk through, it has, I know it's backwards, but triglycerides, kind of some why things might be high or low, and what you're referring to, why it's an important marker. It'll have the range. So it'll kind of be the whole course summarized into an ebook, so that you can flip through there. You don't have to constantly go back to videos. One of the courses I have is 0 text. It's all just video, and it drives me nuts. You know how difficult it is to sit there and go through a 45-minute video and try and find the timestamp of when he was talking about? It's frustrating. So one of the things I've always done for as is my 5th course I've developed. I used to develop courses for my dad's company on diabetes and digestive issues and keto, is that I always have text summaries. And anything important, things like biomarkers are super important to have that there. So I'm basically going to take all of that text summary from each of the lessons and put it into an ebook, more or less, and keep it all in one place. How many total markers get covered? I wish I would have counted. I keep forgetting to count. It's a lot. It's a lot. Is this the right book? I can give you let's see. So, a lot of notes here, hold on. This is the concentrated notes. So just to see, there's all of these markers, these markers, these markers. I don't know how well you guys can see that. There's these markers, these markers, these markers, these markers, and these markers. It's like a lot of dozens. I will have the total count pretty soon. In fact, I'll probably just count them all. When I send out the email with the recording, I'll have it in there. Lots of dozens. Yep. To think that math is actually one of my best subjects and I just have lots of dozens, but it is what it is. Okay, cool. So those are all the things that you get. So now the real question that everyone wants, and I've been asked a dozen times, what does it cost? Okay, here's the good news. You could get this as cheap as $9.99. 5 people can get this as cheap as $9.99. Again, that includes the $185 lab panel and the consult with me, which is kind of stupid as to how cheap you're going to get the course. Because again, you get 10 weeks of lab. Most programs that are self-paced, for example, around functional testing, whether it's blood chemistry or stool or anything else that I've done, the course alone is $9.99 for just the material. That's not a live class. That's just like, here's the material that's self-paced. I usually pay around $1,000 for those courses. So you're getting a 10-week live class plus labs for $9.99. Those are 5 people and you have until Saturday. So you have until Saturday. That's quick. You get 48 hours. That is because it's a ridiculous deal. I can't give it to everyone. So 5 people, $9.99. Go over, sign up. I will be putting out an email. Actually, if you go to, let me make sure. Let's just make sure that this works before I tell all you guys, and then no one can get there. So we're going to test this live in person right now. Yep. So if you go to Fundamenta, there's no L, Fundamenta Wellness Institute.com, you sign up right now. You can be one of the first 5. So if you're just like, I need it right now, boom, go. You get it $9.99. Now, still some other pricing options. Where are my notes? So until March 18th, so you got about 2 weeks, you can save 20%. And because the full price is $15.25. So the full price, I should have said that first. The full price for this course is $15.25. So the $9.99 is really, it's $9.91. It's 35% off. That is a ridiculous deal. It's 35% off. There is a 3-month payment plan, which is in total $17.25. It's 3 payments of $575 once when you sign up, and then the next month, and then month 2. If you want to save 20%, you have until March 18th or until 20 people sign up. fundamentalwellnessinstitute.com. All one. The only dot is the .com. Yeah. Yes, there is a coupon code. I should have said that. You guys are great. Save big. One word, all lowercase. SAVEBIG. It wouldn't let me make them capital. I wanted to make them capital, but whatever. It wouldn't let me make capital coupon codes. Save big, all lowercase. That's going to save you 35%. So it comes out to like $9.91 and some change. If you want if you're not one of the 5, or you wait until after Saturday, then you can use early bird, all lowercase, all one word, to save 20%, which makes it $1,220. Still a huge saving. You're saving what, $300. FYI, people are already signing up, so literally be really quick. You may not want to wait. I just got I think I got 2 notifications that people signed up. So at least 2 of the spots are gone. You can also use that save big on the payment plan. So there is a payment plan option, but it's only asking you, Eartha, you got to make sure you put in the save big code. Yeah, I'm getting people that are coming through with the it's $9.91 and 25 cents. So make sure you put that save big in. When you go to checkout, it'll bring it up. And this is distracting. I should have waited. Is the sign up button is it the sign up today button? Yeah, if you scroll down further, you'll see the actual payment options. So there's different payment, because there's a payment plan as well. So the payment plan again is 3 payments, and you can use the 20% off code on the payment plan. It will save you 20% off of each payment. So instead of 3 payments of $575, if you use early bird, it'll be 3 payments of $460. So it comes out to that would be $1,380, I think, if I did my math correctly. But again, that would be, it's payments, you're saving. So there's a couple different ways. Again, if you go to fundamentalwellnessinstitute.com and you scroll down a little bit, it'll show you there's 2 different options. Okay, Eartha, if you're on the website, scroll down, hit the $15.25, the full payment option. That'll take you to the checkout, and in the checkout, use save big. And honestly, I have a ton of emails. I don't even know if that one is available. Oh, hold on. Okay. Also, someone got, I'm going to have to check. Because it may have blocked someone's payment. So if you got blocked and you're getting an issue, let me know, especially if you were one of the 5, because I'll make sure that you still get it if there are some issues. And honestly, here, let me do this. We're going to change the coupon code, because the coupon code is going to stay the same. I'm going to change how many spots if people are signing up right now. It's just mean to only give it to the first 30-second people. So I'm going to open up this coupon to 10. I'm going to give it 10 spots. I can't give it more than that. That's crazy to me. I love you guys. You guys are fantastic. So we're going to open up. I'm going to open it up 5 more spots. And if one of you guys who have already managed to get to the website, can copy that and put it in the chat, would be super helpful for everyone else. If I can get to some coupons. We're going to edit this coupon. And we're going to give 10 spots. I did that just in time because the last one just got used, which is probably what I just saw. So there are 5 spots left. So if you guys want it, jump in there right now. Literally, those aren't going to last long. And I'm going to turn that off. I'm only giving those so you have like tonight to do it, since the first 5 went in 30 seconds. I'm not going to keep those other 5 until Saturday. I'm only going to keep those through tonight. I will probably turn, if I remember, I will probably cut those off wherever they're at before I go to bed. So jump on that now if that's something that you want. Otherwise, if you are wanting more, the people who are watching the recording are going to be like, what just happened? If you didn't get to the early bird, if you didn't get the Save Big coupon to get that $9.91 price, and you still want in and you still want to save, you have until March 18th to use early bird. That's going to save you 20%. So it'll make the one payment price $1,220. And if you want the payment plan, it'll be 3 payments of $460 for a total of $1,380. If you purchase after March 18th, you're paying the full price. So that'll either be 3 payments of $575 or a single payment of $1,525. So I have ACT now because there are limited spots. Literally, like, be fast, because I think 6 or 7 seats are already gone. I don't know what I'm going to cap the total class at. As of right now, I have 20 coupon spots available. So I will obviously at least allow that many. I may allow more. I'm just going to see, because again, remember that every single one of you gets a consult with me. So I can't have this like a 50-person class. I do still have other clients that I see. I have they're limited right now because I am dedicating probably about 30 to 35 hours a week right now to this course to make sure I get it done on time. Okay, now I am going, the chat this is going to be a difficult thing to go through the chat. It is on Thinkific, by the way, if you're curious about the platform. 100% recommend it. I have used previously, I've built 4 courses technically, because I completely redid the keto course. 4 courses on Teachable. I will take Thinkific over Teachable anytime. And if some of you have taken my original program for practitioners over on Practice Better, I am going to, once I get this done, I am eventually going to move that over to here. You will, of course, if you're already a student, you will get access to it. But I am going to be moving it over to here. I'm going to be making other practitioner-based programs, which is why it's called Institute, because I want this to be, there's going to be several programs. It's a huge thing. I've always loved teaching. Oddly enough, I could never see myself as like a school teacher, but I love educating. I love teaching. And it's something that I'm drastically drawn to. I'll probably have some client-based programs as well. Okay. Can I explain the difference between red, green, and yellow states? I can, actually. There's nothing to do with this, but it does to an extent. So green state is the absolute best. That's where you want to live. I live in a green state. Most states are actually green. That essentially means as long as you don't pretend to have a title or a license or mislead or misrepresent yourself. So you don't, call yourself a dietitian. You don't call yourself licensed, right? You don't call yourself state certified, anything like that. You're pretty open as to how you can practice. Now, of course, again, you still can't diagnose, right? So you can't, an example that we have in one of the quiz questions in week 1 is if you have a client who presents, for the first time you're running a thyroid panel for this client, they've never had one before, and they have antibodies present, you cannot tell them they have Hashimoto's. You can't do it. That's diagnosing. Now, how do you state that? Well, you go through, hey, you have some markers, you have some patterns that are often seen in someone who has a thyroid condition or an autoimmune condition, right? So you're not actually telling them that they have one. Language and wording is like 90% of legality. But that really does, that's pretty much across the board. That's not just in health and wellness in our space, right? So, we have to be careful as unlicensed practitioners and how we talk and the words we use. And that is a huge piece of it, right? You also don't tell someone what to do. You basically kind of you're just recommending or suggesting or educating, right? So there's certain ways we kind of move about that. Yellow states, I always kind of forget the yellow state. I believe the yellow state is, they practice similarly to a green state, but there is no path to licensure, or there is for not, I forget exactly. So someone wants to elaborate on the yellow. I always forget. The green and the red are the most important. The red, you can only educate in general, right? Restart, fantastic. If you are in a red state, you should be a restart instructor, hands down. That's probably the best thing you can do in a red state to use kind of your education, is to teach the restart program, or so you can create your own. The research is done for you, right? Because you're not using that towards each person. It's an educational course. All you're doing is teaching about real whole food and nutrition. It's just education. You're not bio-individual to each individual person. You are allowed in red states to only give general information, not bio-individual. So things like, I'm usually pretty good at trying to state the gray area when it's available and find kind of weasel my way into the gray. I don't really think there's a gray area with red states and any sort of lab testing, because lab testing is specific to that person's lab results, right? There's some potential ways. I've kind of talked about how you could use the NutriQ in red states, and basically just kind of teaching general, like, hey, when this thing is high, it often means that you need support in this area. If that becomes really hard, basically that's what this is. Like, you would need to recreate this entire program. A little difficult. So red states and labs are pretty much a no-go. Yeah, so things like private MD labs, there are a lot of places that are discounted, but if you're trying to order a myriad of different things, like, they pretty much only have the standard panels and groupings of labs. And so that's when it becomes difficult, because, like, for example, finding the CBC, the CMP, vitamin D, thyroid markers, and an NMR for someone who has metabolic syndrome, because most people with metabolic syndrome also have hypothyroidism, so you want to check those markers. Having all those grouped together, you don't find it. There is no panel that has that on these websites. And so you're going to pay full price for each of those. Whereas because I've created a custom panel with those on them, they get a much better pricing, because they don't need to cover each charge, or they don't need to cover the phlebotomy charge for each and every single one. For example, I've got so when I look at my cost, for example, and I'm looking at my lab order form, I have a couple different costs. I have the add-on cost, I have the practitioner cost, and then their recommended patient cost, if you wanted to upcharge for it. So if you start with a panel, let's say you ordered a wellness panel for your client, but then you also wanted to add on the NMR. The NMR on its own, that's all you ordered, is $84. If you wanted to add it to an order, it's $62. So it's a $22 savings. And that's that one test. You keep doing that over and over and over, and it really adds up. Talked about the book. I am correct. We talked about testing. We already talked about that. I understand deep biochem. I'm always looking to be able to order. Discounts are helpful, but not 100% necessary. So looking for labs that say, okay, you can order from us. Yeah, so you'll definitely have access to be able to order labs from LabCorp, and you'll have access to everything. And yeah, it's really interesting, because again, the medical biochemistry versus nutritional biochemistry and what we're looking for is totally different. We look at labs completely different from normal biochem and what we learn. What's your general timeline with new clients when you include blood work? Do you have everyone do blood work? I feel overwhelmed with the testing options, and then what to do with them. Fantastic question, Taylor. No, I do not have every single client do blood work, even in a complex practice, where I do get a lot of complex problems. Now, for me, I run them more often than not currently. That is because most people who come to me are practitioners, health coaches, or people who have just been in like the paleo, Weston A. Price, keto, real food realm for a while. So they've done a lot of the changes already that I would normally walk someone through, right? They've done a lot of those. I don't make, in my practice, I don't have to make a lot of dietary changes in my clients. It's minor things, it's tweaks here and there versus like, holy crap, we need to overhaul everything. I get those sometimes. And so in that case, I do need to order labs more often than not to start seeing what's missing in that person. But I know a lot of practitioners who are getting a lot of standard American people. Go and try and check my history in the group. I am not a fan of doing the slew of tests on someone coming from a standard American diet. I don't care how crappy they feel. Don't test them right away. That's my opinion. As someone who's creating a course on blood chemistry and testing, right? Don't test those people right away. Get them to change their diet for 4 to 6 weeks. Don't be like, oh, well, don't eat gluten for 4 weeks, right? Like change their diet for 4. You don't have to do it right away, but get to a point where we've really gotten to a solid diet for 4 to 6 weeks with maybe some digestive support, right? Some basic support, maybe some blood sugar support, some digestive support, really foundational stuff. And then reassess where they're at and then assess what labs they may need. Because 60% to 80% of their problems are literally going to be fixed by not eating a standard American diet, right? And all that was going to happen is now some people need that push of needing the objective data to be like, dude, look, you're like, you need to change. And I've had some clients who literally ask me like, no, I need labs. Like I need something that even though I know in my mind that I'm not healthy, I need to see it on paper. So we order labs. I will always, always, always support a client's wants and wishes. Some of them come like, hey, I'd love to do a GI map and Dutch test. I'm like, honestly, here's my opinion. Here's what I think. I think we can get away with this, or we may not need that yet. And we can do this. And then if we see that there's still a problem, then we can check that. But we might save $300, $400, $600, depending on how much you want to order, by going this route first. What do you think? If they still want to order the labs, I will always, always, always grant my clients' wishes. They are in charge. It is their health. This is something I am a huge advocate of. If they are dead set on ordering a test, it is not my job to decide whether they should or shouldn't have it. I will inform them why I think they should or shouldn't have a test, but it's ultimately their say. I also won't not work with a client just because they can't do lab work or they don't want to do lab work. I will be honest with them if it's a thyroid client and be like, listen, like I need to know where the dysfunction is in your thyroid because a lot of different patterns and issues that can arise. So just know that we may only have minimal results without it. But if that's what you want and that's what you're willing, we can try and work through it. So yeah, I know that's a bigger answer. As far as timeline, it will again kind of depend. I would like to see 4 to 6 weeks if they're coming from standard American diet of real dietary changes before I start digging into lab work, just because a lot of it is going to be like, duh, of course those are bad. You've been eating the standard American diet for months, years, decades. The Q&A, is the Q&A only in webinar? I always forget about Ryan Hall. He's an awesome guy too that works over with him. He has a lot of great info on lipid markers, the high cholesterol action plan program. Ash, who does? I don't know who you were referring to with that one. If you were talking about Chris Crosser or not, I don't know. I think she left already. Are you using the NAQ information to determine what markers you want your clients to initially run, or do you have initial standard bloods you run? That is a fantastic question, Laura. Both. So it depends. If I have someone coming to me with like a diagnosis, right? They have type 2 diabetes. They have hypercholesterolemia. They have hypothyroidism, right? Those are certain. I have very specific markers that I know are related to those conditions that are going to help me with those. And so that's what I'm going to look at. I'm going to look at what is that disease, what is that diagnosis affecting, and what's affecting the diagnosis. It goes both ways, right? We know that diabetes increases your risk for a lot of other issues. So not only am I looking at blood sugar markers, I'm also looking at markers to see what has been influenced by this deep insulin resistance. If I don't have that, then I'm probably starting with a NutriQ, and then in 4 weeks or so, looking at some bloods for those kind of people. If they don't have like something super specific that they're looking for, I'm either going to, depending on where they're at, I'm going to start with some of my more general panels, which is what you guys will be getting as part of that. And by the way, we can order those labs whenever. You don't need to wait until the class starts. If you've already signed up, I'll be reaching out to each one of you, and we can get that set up. So you can do that like now. We don't have to wait, a month to do that. But I'll use some of those. I've got a couple different kind of general panels that are more or less ranging in price, and from I think $83 to $185. But yeah, are you going to include reference range for kids? I will not, simply because I don't really have experience with kids and labs, mostly out of paranoia. I do really basic stuff with kids as far as like educational stuff and basic tweaks versus getting into labs and trying to like supplement the crap out of kids. Honestly, I don't work with a ton of kids. I generally refer out if it's someone coming to me with your kid. You'll notice in the group, I pretty much never speak up on if someone's looking for a referral for a child. I pretty much never speak up because it's just not an area I work in. And so I don't have ranges. I've never really, a lot of programs I've gone through, I've never really seen ranges. I think there's like a couple markers where we may have some differences. And if I can find them in programs that I've gone through, I'm more than willing to give some suggestions on those. I think as a whole, they're not drastically different, but there are some differences. Can you repeat what is covered in week 2 and 3? I think someone already put those in. Yep. Do you have a sales page with more detail on each module in the weekly schedule? Yeah, so even though Ash isn't here, so everyone else, when you go to the website, you can go to the individual course itself. There's the big sales program, and then you can click on the all courses at the top, and it will break down. You can open up each week. It won't look exactly like this because this is something I made at Canva, but it will basically break down. Here's the week 1, and here's the different lectures in there. I will tell you it's not complete because there are some other things that I need to add in there, but the foundations of each of what you're going to get in there, the lectures and things like that are in there. Just know that there won't be less than that. It will actually be more than that. Who is we? Who are you teaching with? Did I say we? Do I say we sometimes? There is not another person. It's just me. I might say we as all of us collective versus like me and someone. I don't have a mouse in my pocket. Something my stepdad always said when I say we. Is this all via Zoom, or is practice better portal involved? No, so none of this, Amy. Like I said, all of this will be the program is on Thinkific, as you saw on the website, and even it's actually perfect. Zoom and Thinkific integrates with Zoom, and so you will even still join the Zoom call through the program in Thinkific, so you can log in everything done through there. So it'd be great. Please record questions. So yeah, okay, so just ask. That was a direct message. Will classes take place at this time? Roughly how long are the sessions? Yes, so the classes will be Thursdays at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. They will be recorded. How long will each of them go? I would estimate 1 to 2 hours. I don't foresee them being shorter than an hour, including Q&A. Maybe they will be. I'm going to go on the safe side. I'm a talker and say that most of them are going to be 60 to 90 minutes, and a couple of them may even be 2 hours, depending on questions. Things like cholesterol is a big one, and I'm sure there's going to be tons of questions. So that could be a 2 hour. I will probably cut it off at 2 hours, just kind of depending on the feel of the group. And on those, we'll have breaks. Like I will make sure that we have breaks so people can like pee and get water and things like that. We'll take breaks. But yeah. Did you say approximately how long weekly calls? Let's just do another question about that. Okay, cool. So the amount of time that you will probably need to set aside. I would imagine each week is probably going to have, on average, 1 to 2 hours of content if you just go through it, right? It's probably going to be close around that area. So that could take anywhere from 1 to 3 or 4 hours, depending on how often you want to stop and take notes. Again, you're going to have kind of that ebook guide to go along with. So you could even just, make highlights and make extra notes on there. So it'd be nice and easy. You could print that all off and be able to do your notes on there, or just keep your own notes. I will tell you, you are going to make a lot of notes. Hopefully, fingers crossed, you should be. Pages and pages and pages of notes. I have a lot of notes from all the courses I've done, and it helps for sure. It's also why I've put it, I will put all of that summary context text into an ebook, so you also have that, because it's something I haven't gotten from my programs. What lab did you say you prefer again? So we order through LabCorp, is what we'll be using and who you'll have access to. Is there coupon? We talking? Okay, so now here's all the pricing issues. Okay, so we got through all that. How many hours is the course expected to take per week? We talked about that. And a good thing, so again, this is not pre-approved for CEUs with the NTA, but CEUs are really easy with the NTA. I can guarantee you that if you submit a CEU report for this course, they will definitely give you the CEUs, and they should count the course material plus the webinars, which means this one course alone would give you I can guarantee it's going to give you the 24 hours. You will spend 24 hours total between going through this the course itself and then the calls. You will spend 24 hours. So that would take care of that. Okay, what platform do you, we talked about that. Sorry, did you already say when is the weekly class and how much time for each class? Yes, it'll be Thursdays at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. Laura is in New Zealand. I'm about to sign up, but for the blood list I sent you the other day, are you confident that you are going to teach me? I will be able to utilize with the blood list. Yes, Laura, so if you were still here, I did look over this. I don't remember if I responded or not. If I didn't, I apologize. But I did look over those, and the vast majority of what we cover, you have access to, especially the key ones, which really isn't surprising because, again, a lot of these are very diagnostic markers, so they should be available worldwide. But the majority, some of the specialty ones like the NMR, I still don't know if it's available outside of the US, maybe Canada. It's still not available in a lot of other areas, but we still talk about the standard lipid panel and what you can infer from it and what you can't. There are green states where there is no direct testing. So yes and no. That isn't that the practitioner isn't allowed to do it. It's that individuals are not allowed to order their own. It's so dumb. It's really not laws of the ability of the practitioner to practice. It's that states like New York and New Jersey, I believe, definitely New York, don't allow you to self-order labs, and this still counts as self-ordering labs. So that you would definitely need to work with the person's doctor. And again, we'll also cover having that conversation and get, a lot of clients who are seeing doctors that who order labs, they're going to ask like, hey, can I get that? I highly suggest that I don't make money off of my labs for clients. And so I'm just like, yep, here's the list. I'll even give you the LabCorp codes. So you can just give them this list to your doctor and get it ordered, and it's covered by insurance. And I always offer that to my clients. I will tell you a good chunk of the time the doctors get the order wrong, but we do what we can. Which day each week are lab classes? We talked about that. New Jersey, New York, I think that's Maryland, and either Delaware or Rhode Island. Rhode Island, I know you can't. Oh, that's. I'm pretty sure Ashley went. She went to a lab in Rhode Island. I don't think she went over to Connecticut. So Rhode Island should be fine. So probably Delaware. Will you be offering this course again? Yes, this will not be the only time, especially the response we have. This will not be the only time that I offer this course. I will probably do it twice a year. I work in a chiro office in New York and would be able to, I would be able to get benefit from ordering tests and or utilizing your course. Yeah, so your doctor, the chiro would need to order the labs because you're in New York. It needs to go through an actual doctor. You cannot order that, and a person cannot self-order them. But if you could, if the chiro is able to order labs, then they're able to do that, and you were just there to interpret them, 100%, this would be a very helpful thing for you. Yes, so anyone who's still doing the coupon codes, all lowercase for all of the coupon codes, all one word for both of them as well. Do you have a guess on how long we would spend each year? So we talked about that. April 8th is the start, and the last class is on June 10th. So the second, we have 2 in June 3rd. Then the last week's material opens up on June 4th, and then you get the last class on June 10th. Oh, Sarah, that's a fantastic question. The closest LabCorp to you is 2.5 hours away. Can you take that to a different lab? Yes. It's not perfect. It's not all the time. So LabCorp, so the company we use is DHA, Direct Health. They will, they keep a record of other offices that have worked with them and worked with LabCorp and will accept their draws. And then what they do is they send you a kit to have that done, for everything to be collected so it gets done properly. It is, I believe, a $40 upcharge for that. And it's not a guarantee that there is an office. You can always call around doctors and ask if they, in different labs, like certain doctors will do it in office, if they have a phlebotomist around usually, and then also just other labs, you can ask if they accept requisitions from LabCorp. If they do, then that's definitely something that that can happen. We can't guarantee it, of course. It is, I wish, it has been an issue with COVID. I had a client who used to have one within 30 minutes, and then several locations have closed temporarily and permanently in the last year because of COVID. And the next nearest one was like 4.5 hours away. Thankfully, he's a truck driver and he drives that route anyways. For someone who is not, that is obviously a frustrating thing that could happen. And so that is one of, potentially one of the downsides of blood chemistry, probably one of the only downsides of blood chemistry versus something like a drop ship kit of like Dutch or GI map, where it just gets sent to a person and they send it back. Good news is you get results much faster. So awesome, perfect. If your local hospital will do it, that would be great. If that's something you want, just reach out to me, and I can if you can give me that information for them, I can see if they've worked with them previously and or kind of get that communication started to see if that's something that we could do. Seeing if there was anything else. I think that's it. Does anyone else have any other questions? Thank you for everyone who's still here for an hour and 45 minutes almost. Which doesn't seem like it. This is why I can tell you that some of these classes will probably go for 2 hours, because this is just me talking. This isn't even Q&A, like other people jumping in and asking questions. This is just typing questions. But yeah, so I'm open on Thursday. It's one of the reasons why I did Thursdays. I don't have my kids. If I eat late, I eat late. It starts at 4 o'clock my time. So I don't mind going late. I know some people are like, okay, I need to go. But it's a possibility. I do need to go shortly because I have to call at 6 o'clock. Will the info be relevant enough for us to analyze previous labs clients bring in? Yeah, totally. So usually what I tell people with previous labs is if they have a history of them, they can be good to look at because we can see patterns, right? We can see what's been present over time or what has been changing, what's been progressing, whatever it may be. So we can often look at that. I'm not necessarily going to act on it, but seeing that pattern can be helpful. So if someone had labs 6 months ago, and that's all they have, I'm not going to use those to act on, right? Because that's information 6 months ago. Who knows where their body is at now? Even if they've been mostly doing the same things, things can change. But if they, if they come in and they've been getting labs every 6 months for 2 years, I'm going to look at them just to at least see the pattern. And that can help me pinpoint what I want to order for them, right? So it's definitely still useful. We just may not necessarily act on it with a protocol. I will usually tell them that I will act on labs within the last 2 to 3 months. 3 months is kind of my cutoff as to what I personally decide in my practice to act on. But yeah, if that is it, if you guys saw, I am gonna cut it off because I need to go to the bathroom. I need to drink some water and get on a call in 15 minutes. So I will cut it off. Amy, you are so very welcome. You look tired. I'm allowed to say that to Amy because I've met Amy many times in person. She's a dear friend. But yes, guys, for one, everyone who's here, thank you. Everyone who signed up, extremely thankful for you. Hopefully the rest of you guys do sign up. Like I said, there are maybe a couple of those. I have a lot of emails. Holy crap. My work email has not looked like that in a long time. There may not be any spots open, so you might need to use the early bird. But again, if you guys still have questions, reach out to me anytime. You can email me. You can find me on social media. Don't be shy. Ask questions. And thank you guys again. And hopefully I will see you in a month.